The silver light caught Patricia's eye first. Not the usual crimson sheen she'd become accustomed to over her 8 years at St. Augustine's Hospital, but something else entirely, a mercurial shimmer that danced across the microscope slide like liquid moonlight. "That can't be right," she muttered, adjusting the fine focus knob. The blood sample from donor number 347 Marley Novak, according to the paperwork, should have appeared no different from the hundreds of others she'd processed that month alone. Detroit, 2032. The city had weathered economic collapse after economic collapse until selling blood became one of the few reliable ways for many to make rent. The Strand Blood Donation Center, a new wing of St. Augustine's, had opened 2 years prior, offering premium rates that drew lines around the block on payment days. Patricia Nguyen had transferred from the emergency room, grateful for the regular hours after years of brutal night shifts treating gunshot wounds and overdoses. She blinked twice, then leaned away from the microscope. Maybe she was just tired. Working at Strand paid better than the ER, but processing 50 donors a day took its toll. She rubbed her eyes, took a sip of lukewarm coffee, and looked again. The silver light remained, a gossamer thread woven through the red cells, pulsing gently like a distant heartbeat. Jerome," she called out, not taking her eyes from the scope. "Can you come look at this?" The night security guard poked his head in, his massive frame filling the doorway. "What's up, Pat? Another junkie trying to sell bad blood?" "No, I don't know what it is." She stepped aside, gesturing toward the microscope. "Tell me what you see." Jerome Williams, former Detroit Lions linebacker turned hospital security, bent awkwardly over the small lab table. "Just looks like blood to me. Maybe a little shiny." "Shiny," she repeated, "and blood isn't supposed to be shiny." She checked the donor information again. Marley Novak, 22, female, student at Wayne State. First-time donor, no medical conditions reported, blood type O negative. "Where is she now?" Patricia asked. Jerome shrugged. "Processing room, probably. Want me to check?" "Please." While Jerome was gone, Patricia prepared a second slide and a vial for additional testing. Something wasn't right, and as the senior phlebotomist on duty, it was her responsibility to ensure all donations were safe both for recipients and donors. The door burst open minutes later, Jerome's face tight with alarm. "She's seizing," he said breathlessly. "Dr. Klein is with her, but it doesn't look good." Patricia rushed down the sterile white hallway, Jerome's heavy footsteps pounding behind her. By the time they reached processing room 3, a small crowd had gathered: 2 nurses, a technician, and Dr. Klein hunched over a gurney where Marley Novak's body convulsed violently. "What happened?" Patricia demanded, pushing through. "He collapsed right after donation," the technician explained. "Started convulsing about 2 minutes ago. Dr. Klein was performing chest compressions now, the girl's body unnaturally still. "Get me epinephrine," he shouted. Patricia watched in horror as the team worked desperately to revive the young woman. Her eyes drifted to the collection bag hanging nearby, the bag containing Marley's recent donation. The blood inside wasn't red anymore. It swirled with the same silver light she'd seen under the microscope, but stronger now, almost luminescent. "Dr. Klein," she said urgently, pointing at the bag. "Look." The doctor glanced up momentarily, his face registering confusion before returning to his patient. "What the hell is that? Did someone tamper with the sample?" "No," Patricia began, but the monitors suddenly shrieked in unison as Marley's vital signs flatlined. "Charging to 300, Dr. Klein called out. "Clear." The girl's body arched with the defibrillator shock, then settled back onto the gurney. Unnaturally still. The room fell silent except for the monotone drone of the heart monitor. Time of death 2147, Dr. Klein pronounced grimly, pulling off his gloves. I want a full toxicology panel. Find out what was in her system. As the team began post-mortem procedures, Patricia's attention remained fixed on the blood bag. The silver luminescence had intensified, transforming the entire contents into something that resembled quicksilver more than human blood. She approached it cautiously. We need to quarantine this. I'll call the lab director. Dr. Klein agreed, finally giving the bag his full attention. I've never seen anything like it. Could be some new designer drug or... He stopped mid-sentence as the lights flickered throughout the facility. The blood bag seemed to pulse in response, the silver fluid briefly glowing brighter before settling again. Patricia, secure that sample immediately, Dr. Klein ordered. Full containment protocols, and don't tell anyone else until we know what we're dealing with. She nodded, carefully removing the bag from its hook. As her fingers touched the plastic, a cold sensation shot up her arm, not painful, but alien, like electricity without the shock. She nearly dropped it. You okay? Jerome asked, noticing her reaction. Fine, she lied, just static. Later that night, after the body had been taken to the morgue and incident reports filed, Patricia returned to her small lab. The official story was anaphylactic shock, though Dr. Klein clearly didn't believe it. Neither did she. Instead of logging the anomalous blood sample into the system, she took a small vial for herself, hiding it inside her purse. She knew it was against protocol, potentially illegal, but something about the silver substance compelled her. She had to know what it was. On her way out, she passed the hospital director's office. The door was slightly ajar, and raised voices filtered through the gap. This is the third one this month, a woman's voice said sharply. Unavoidable complications, replied a deeper voice, one Patricia didn't recognize. The success rate is improving. Success rate? A girl died tonight. Strand, as in the Strand Blood Donation Center. Patricia froze, listening intently. One casualty among hundreds, the man said dismissively. The program continues. The rewards far outweigh the risks. And when the board starts asking questions? They won't, I've made sure of it. Patricia backed away silently, heart pounding. Whatever was happening, the hospital director was involved and someone named Strand was pulling the strings. She hurried to her car, the vial of silver-infused blood secure in her purse, feeling as though she was carrying a tiny bomb. Whatever it was, whatever had killed Marley Novak, Patricia was determined to find out. The next morning, instead of reporting directly to work, Patricia drove to the other side of the city. In a small research lab at Detroit Mercy University worked her old friend, Dr. Rashida Okami, a brilliant biochemist who operated largely outside the corporate research structure. This better be good, Rashida said by way of greeting, opening her door at 7 a.m. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore a faded Detroit Tigers sweatshirt over flannel pajama pants. I was up until 3 working on grant proposals. I need your help, Patricia said, stepping inside, and discretion. Rashida's cramped apartment doubled as a home laboratory, with equipment crowding every surface. She cleared a space at her kitchen table and gestured for Patricia to sit. What's going on? She asked, suddenly serious upon seeing Patricia's expression. Patricia withdrew the vial from her purse. In the morning light, the silver particles in the blood were less visible but still present flecks of metallic light suspended in the dark red fluid. A donor died at the center yesterday. Her blood did this. Rashida leaned forward, examining the vial without touching it. I've never seen anything like that. Is it some kind of reaction to the anticoagulant? I don't think so. I checked 3 different preparations. It's something in the blood itself. Rashida carefully took the vial, holding it up to the light. I can run some tests, but I'll need time. And this isn't much to work with. It's all I could take without being noticed. Patricia explained. There's more at the center, but it's under lockdown. I overheard the hospital director talking to someone the person the center is named after. I think. They said this wasn't the first death. Rashida's eyebrows shot up. Are you suggesting this is deliberate? That someone's experimenting on donors? I don't know, Patricia admitted, but I plan to find out. Be careful, Rashida warned, already gathering equipment. If there's something illegal happening at St. Augustine's, these people won't hesitate to protect themselves. Just tell me what's in that blood, Patricia said, rising to leave. I'll handle the rest. Give me 48 hours, Rashida promised. And Pat, watch your back. The warning echoed in Patricia's mind as she drove to work. The Strand Center operated as usual that day, donors lining up for their chance at the premium payments. Most of them students or unemployed workers desperate for cash. Patricia processed them mechanically, watching each blood sample with new suspicion, but none showed the telltale silver shimmer. After her shift, she lingered, claiming paperwork as an excuse. What she really wanted was access to the center's records, specifically information about previous adverse donor reactions. The administration office emptied around 6 p.m., giving her an opportunity. Using her employee access card, she slipped inside and began searching the digital files. The system's security was surprisingly robust for a hospital subdepartment. Basic donor information was accessible, but detailed incident reports were encrypted behind additional firewalls. After 20 minutes of frustration, Patricia found a workaround. The emergency notification system kept a log of all code blues called throughout the facility. She cross-referenced these with the donation schedule for the past 6 months. A pattern emerged. 8 medical emergencies had occurred during or immediately after donations. Each was classified differently: allergic reaction, unknown drug interaction, pre-existing condition, but the timing was suspicious. All 8 donors had been first-timers. All had received the premium payment rate, and according to the records, all had recovered and been discharged. But Patricia remembered the conversation she'd overheard. This is the 3rd one this month. Deaths, not just emergencies, and Marley Novak's body was in the morgue. Something wasn't adding up. She was so engrossed in her search that she almost missed the approaching footsteps. Quickly closing the files, she pretended to be completing routine paperwork as Jerome's massive frame appeared in the doorway. Working late? He asked, suspicious. Just catching up, she replied with forced casualness. Donor documentation was backed up today. Jerome nodded, though his eyes lingered on the computer screen. You should head home. New security protocols: no staff in administrative areas after hours without clearance. Since when? Since today, director's orders. Patricia gathered her things, feeling Jerome's eyes on her back. They'd been friendly for years, but something in his demeanor had changed. He escorted her all the way to the parking garage, watching as she drove away. That night, Patricia couldn't sleep. The silver blood, the mysterious deaths, the secrecy, all of it pointed to something deeply wrong at the Strand Center. But what? Human experimentation seemed too flagrant, even for a corporation operating in bankrupted Detroit, where regulatory oversight had all but collapsed. Her phone rang at 3 a.m. Rashida's voice came through, tense and excited. You need to come over now. What did you find? Patricia asked, already pulling on clothes. Not over the phone, just hurry. 30 minutes later. Patricia stood in Rashida's lab, staring at a computer screen displaying molecular structures she didn't understand. Explain it in English, she requested. Rashida pointed to a complex atomic diagram. This is an element that doesn't exist. What do you mean? I mean, it's not on the periodic table. It's not a compound or an isotope of anything we know. The atomic structure is impossible. Patricia stared at the screen, trying to comprehend. You're saying Marley Novak's blood contained an impossible element? Not just contained it, it was being transformed by it. The silver particles are active. Patricia, they're modifying the surrounding cells, rewriting them somehow. Like a virus? No, more fundamental than that. It's changing the atomic composition of the blood itself. Rashida pulled up another screen showing a time-lapse of blood cells. Watch. Patricia observed in fascination as normal red blood cells gradually developed silver filaments that eventually consumed them, transforming each cell into a glistening silver sphere. Is it contagious? She asked, suddenly worried about her own exposure. Not in any conventional sense. It requires a catalyst, something that wasn't in the sample you gave me. These changes happened when I introduced certain electromagnetic frequencies. Patricia's mind raced. What would happen if this got into someone's bloodstream? A transfusion recipient? Without the catalyst? Probably nothing. With it? Rashida shook her head. Total cellular transformation. It would rewrite their biological makeup at the atomic level. Killing them or changing them into something else entirely. Rashida's eyes were wide with scientific wonder and fear. Patricia, this isn't just advanced technology. This is beyond anything human science is capable of. The implication hung in the air between them. If not human science, then what? I need to go back, Patricia said finally. There must be records, research notes, something that explains what they're doing. This is bigger than hospital misconduct, Rashida warned. If what I'm seeing is real, you could be dealing with something not from here. All the more reason to find answers. Rashida gripped her arm. Promise me you'll be careful and take this. She handed Patricia a small device. It's an EM frequency detector. If there's more of this substance, or if they're using the catalyst, this will pick it up. Patricia slipped the device into her pocket. I'll call you tomorrow. If you don't, I'm going to the authorities, Rashida said firmly. Whatever this is, it's dangerous. Back at her apartment, Patricia tried to process everything she'd learned. An impossible element in human blood, cellular transformation, technology beyond human capability. The pieces refused to form a coherent picture. She arrived at work early the next day, determined to find more concrete evidence. The center operated normally through the morning, but Patricia noticed subtle changes, additional security personnel, new cameras in previously unmonitored areas, and most telling, a team of technicians installing keycard readers on doors to the basement level, an area that had always been accessible to all staff. During her lunch break, she casually approached one of the maintenance workers. "What's going on downstairs?" she asked, offering him half of her sandwich. The man glanced around before answering. "Storage expansion, that's all they told us, but they've been bringing in some heavy-duty equipment, industrial freezers. Looks like... for blood storage?" He shrugged. "Above my pay grade, ma'am. But whatever it is, they're serious about keeping people out. New security system links directly to an off-site monitoring center. That afternoon, Patricia processed a young man named Ellis Reeves, another first-time donor. As she drew his blood, she observed it carefully, but it appeared normal, no silver shimmer, no unusual properties. Yet when she ran the standard screening tests, his blood was flagged for special processing by the computer system. She marked his sample with a small personal identifier, a tiny dot of lab marker on the underside of the vial before sending it through the system. 2 hours later, she managed to access the central blood storage unit, ostensibly to retrieve plasma for a hospital patient. Ellis Reeves' marked vial was nowhere to be found. She checked the computer system. According to the records, His donation had been accepted and stored in bank card designation Patricia had never seen before. The system provided no location for Bank C. As her shift ended, Patricia made a decision. She would have to access the newly secured basement area, and she would need help. "Jerome," she called, catching the security guard as he began his evening rounds. "Got a minute?" Their relationship had always been friendly. They'd shared countless coffee breaks and occasional drinks after difficult shifts. If anyone would help her, it would be Jerome. "What's up?" he asked, his expression guarded. "Have you noticed anything strange lately? The new security, the basement lockdown?" Jerome's face remained impassive. "Just upgrades. Hospital policy." "Since when do blood banks need military-grade security?" she pressed. "And what happened to the other donors who had complications like Marley Novak?" A flash of something recognition, concern, crossed Jerome's features before disappearing. "You should drop it, Pat," he said quietly. "Focus on your job." My job is patient care," she retorted, "and including donors. If something's happening to them—" "Nothing's happening," he interrupted firmly. Then, glancing around, he lowered his voice. "But if it was, asking questions wouldn't be safe. Understand?" She studied his face. "You know something." Jerome sighed, massive shoulders slumping slightly. "Night shift, midnight to 6 a.m. The cameras on the basement level go offline for exactly 10 minutes every night at 2:17 a.m. System maintenance, they call it." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because my nephew was a donor last month. Had a complication. Hospital says he was discharged, but no one's seen him since." Jerome's eyes hardened. "Find out what happened to him." "His name was Marcus Williams." Patricia nodded solemnly. "I'll try." At 1:45 a.m. Patricia returned to St. Augustine's, using her employee badge to enter through a side door. The night shift was minimal. A couple of nurses on the main floor, a single security guard watching the front entrance. Not Jerome. He'd arranged to switch shifts with another guard. She made her way to the basement access door, now equipped with the new security system. Her badge wouldn't open it, but she didn't plan to use the door anyway. An old service elevator at the back of the building connected directly to the basement, a remnant from when the hospital stored medical records in physical form. The elevator hadn't been used in years, and building services had forgotten to include it in the security upgrade. Jerome had remembered. Patricia descended slowly, the ancient machinery groaning in protest. Rashida's EM detector remained silent in her pocket. Whatever the mysterious catalyst was, it wasn't active near the elevator. The basement was dark when she arrived, illuminated only by emergency lights casting long shadows across concrete floors. Patricia moved cautiously, following a series of pipes along the ceiling that seemed newer than their surroundings. At 2:15 a.m., she positioned herself near a heavy door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." 2 minutes later, she heard a faint click as the camera mounted above the door powered down, its red indicator light blinking out. 10 minutes. She had to work fast. The door was locked, but Jerome had provided a maintenance keycard that granted basic access. It worked, the heavy door swinging open to reveal a long corridor lined with stainless steel. Unlike the rest of the basement, this area was brightly lit, pristine, and smelled of antiseptic. Patricia moved quickly, checking rooms as she went. The first few contained standard medical equipment, centrifuges, refrigeration units, computers. But deeper in, the facilities became increasingly strange. One room housed what appeared to be modified MRI machines, their central chambers replaced with transparent cylinders filled with a cloudy silver fluid. Another contained rows of hospital beds arranged in a circle around a central pillar that pulsed with soft blue light. The EM detector in her pocket suddenly came to life, vibrating intensely. She was getting close to whatever served as the catalyst. At the end of the corridor stood a final door larger than the others, secured with both electronic and mechanical locks. The maintenance keycard wouldn't work here. Patricia checked her watch, 4 minutes remaining before the cameras reactivated. She examined the door, looking for any way inside, near the floor. She noticed a small ventilation grate. Kneeling, she peered through it into the room beyond. What she saw defied explanation. The chamber was vast, impossibly so, extending far beyond what the building's dimensions should allow. The walls curved upward, disappearing into darkness, creating a dome-like space that seemed to warp and shift as she watched. In the center stood a structure like nothing Patricia had ever seen. A towering column of intertwined glass and metal tubes through which flowed silver fluid. The tubes branched outward, connecting to hundreds of suspension tanks. Inside each tank floated a human form, barely visible through the silvery medium. The detector in her pocket vibrated violently now, the readings off the scale. As Patricia watched, transfixed, one of the tanks at the periphery began to drain. The silver fluid receded, revealing the person inside, a young man, pale and still. As the last of the fluid drained away, his eyes snapped open, glowing with the same silver light Patricia had seen in Marley's blood. She gasped involuntarily, then clapped a hand over her mouth. Too late. A voice spoke from behind her. Curiosity is both humanity's greatest strength and its most dangerous weakness. Patricia whirled around to face a tall, slender man in an immaculate white suit. His features were sharp, almost too symmetrical to be natural, and his eyes held the same silvery quality she'd seen in the tanks. "Who are you?" she demanded, backing away. "I'm called Strand here," he replied, his accent faintly European but impossible to place. "Though my true name is Isef, and you, Patricia Nguyen, have discovered something you weren't supposed to see. What have you done to those people?" she asked, gesturing toward the ventilation grate. "What happened to Marley Novak? To Marcus Williams?" Strandor Isef regarded her with curiosity. "They're evolving, transforming, becoming bridges between worlds. You're experimenting on them without consent," Patricia accused, "We're killing them." "Some don't survive the transition," he acknowledged. "But those who do achieve something remarkable existence in two planes simultaneously." The detector vibrated again, more urgently. 1 minute until the cameras reactivated. "What are you?" Patricia asked, a terrible suspicion forming. Isef smiled, revealing teeth too perfect to be human. "I am a refugee, Ms. Nguyen, one of many. Our universe is dying, collapsing under laws of physics you couldn't comprehend. We found yours, vibrant and stable, but crossing between dimensions isn't simple. We need anchors. The blood," Patricia realized, "the element that doesn't exist here. Precisely human blood, infused with particles from our world, creates the perfect biological bridge. The catalyst activates the transformation, allowing select humans to serve as conduits." "The conduits for what?" Isef gestured expansively. "For us, for salvation. Your kind helps our kind survive." Patricia's watch beeped softly. "Time up." "The cameras," she said. "Won't be a problem," Isef replied smoothly. "I control all systems here. How else could I build this facility within your primitive hospital?" Patricia glanced toward the exit, calculating her chances, slim to none. "Don't worry," Isef continued. "I'm not going to harm you. In fact, I've been expecting someone like you, observant, compassionate, driven by ethical concerns. You represent the best of humanity. What do you want from me?" "Understanding, cooperation." His silver eyes gleamed. "I can show you everything, Patricia, the truth about our worlds, about the transformation process. Some of your donors didn't die, they evolved. Marley Novak exists now in both dimensions. Her consciousness expanded beyond human limitations. And those who didn't survive, like Marcus Williams? A flicker of something like regret crossed Isef's features. Unfortunate failures. The process is imperfect, but improving. We're learning to identify compatible candidates. By experimenting on desperate people who need money, Patricia said bitterly. By offering opportunity to those willing to take risks, he countered. The premium payments compensate for that risk. Without informed consent, would anyone consent if they knew the full truth? Would your primitive scientific understanding even allow for comprehension of what we're offering? Patricia thought of Rashida's astonishment at the impossible element. Maybe not. But that doesn't give you the right to decide for them. Isef studied her for a long moment. Come, he said finally. Let me show you what we've accomplished. Then judge us, against her better judgment. Patricia followed him through a concealed door into the massive chamber she'd glimpsed through the grate. Up close, the technology was even more alien organic-looking components melded seamlessly with mechanical systems, pulsing with life. Our biology and technology evolved together, Isef explained, noting her fascination. What you see as separate categories, organic and synthetic, we see as a continuum. The central column of intertwined tubes rose at least 30 feet high, silver fluid coursing through transparent sections. The surrounding tanks, hundreds of them, were arranged in concentric circles, each containing a floating human form. Are they conscious? Patricia asked, unable to tear her eyes away. In transition, Isef replied. Their physical forms exist here while their consciousness learns to navigate the other side. And when they're finished? Isef led her to an adjacent chamber where a dozen people sat in meditation poses, eyes closed. Their skin had a subtle silver sheen, almost pearlescent in the soft light. These are the successful transitions, he said proudly. They maintain human form here but can project their consciousness into our dimension at will. They serve as anchors, allowing more of my kind to cross over. One of the meditating figures opened his eyes, silver white, luminous, and smiled at Patricia. She recognized him as a donor from 3 weeks earlier. Ellis, she gasped. Ellis Reeves. The young man nodded but didn't speak. They communicate differently now, Isef explained. Language becomes insufficient. Patricia circled the room, examining the transformed humans. They appeared peaceful, healthy even, but fundamentally changed. And your ultimate goal? She asked. How many of us do you intend to transform? As many as necessary to stabilize the bridge between worlds, Isef answered. Perhaps thousands, perhaps millions. It depends on the rate of dimensional decay. The implication struck Patricia like a physical blow. You're talking about changing humanity itself. Evolving it, Isef corrected. Those who successfully transition will guide your species toward a new future, and that includes cooperation with beings like me. And those who don't want to evolve? He will continue as they are for now, but eventually all dimensions intersect. Change is inevitable. Patricia thought of the hospital director's complicity, the covered-up deaths, the missing donors. How many have died in your experiments? Isef hesitated. 17 across all test sites. Test sites? There are more facilities like this. 3 in North America, 7 worldwide. The scale of the operation stunned Patricia. This wasn't just about St. Augustine's or Detroit. It was a global initiative to fundamentally alter humanity. What gives you the right? She demanded. Necessity, Isef replied simply. Survival, the same impulse that drives all life. Before Patricia could respond, the central column pulsed brightly. the silver fluid momentarily glowing like captured lightning. The meditating figures all turned toward it simultaneously, their expressions rapturous. "Ah," Isef said, "the advocate arrives." The air in the center of the room began to shimmer and distort, reality itself seeming to fold inward. A form materialized, humanoid but constantly shifting, its boundaries never quite fixed. It gleamed with the same silver light as the transformed blood, but infinitely more intense. "What is that?" Patricia whispered, shielding her eyes from the brightness. "A representative from the other side," Isef explained reverently. "One who exists primarily in our dimension but can manifest briefly in yours." The shimmering entity, the advocate, regarded Patricia with what seemed like curiosity, though it had no discernible face. When it spoke, the words formed directly in her mind, bypassing her ears entirely. "You have questions." It wasn't a question but a statement, vibrating through Patricia's consciousness with uncomfortable intensity. "Yes?" she managed, struggling to organize her thoughts under the entity's attention. "Why are you doing this? Why transform humans?" "Symbiosis is survival. Your dimension stabilizes ours. Ours elevates yours." "But people are dying," Patricia argued. "You're changing them without consent." "Change without consent is the nature of evolution. Asteroids, radiation, viral mutations all transform without permission." "Those are natural processes," Patricia countered. "This is deliberate intervention." "A distinction without difference. The outcome is identical adaptation or extinction." The advocate's form pulsed, growing temporarily more solid before dissolving back into shimmering light. "Our dimension collapses. Billions will perish. Your dimension remains stable but primitive. The exchange benefits both." Patricia struggled to process the entity's alien logic. "What happens if we refuse? If I expose what you're doing here?" The advocate's response came not in words, but in images that flooded Patricia's mind. Two universes intertwined like strands of DNA, one darkening as it collapsed while the other continued, oblivious to the coming catastrophe. Then, the collapse accelerating, dragging the stable universe down with it, both disappearing into cosmic oblivion. Connected now, separate fates impossible. "You're saying if your universe dies, ours follows?" Patricia asked, horrified. "Yes, the bridge works both ways, salvation or destruction shared." Isef stepped forward. "That's why we need the blood program. Patricia, human biology, modified with our element, creates permanent bridges between dimensions. Each successful transition strengthens the connection, stabilizes both worlds." "While killing 1 in 10 donors," Patricia retorted. "Acceptable loss ratio for species survival." The cold calculation in the advocate's statement chilled Patricia. "Not to the ones who die, not to their families. The alternative is total extinction. All families, all species, 2 universes erased." Patricia looked around the Shambhala, the floating bodies in transition, at the meditating figures with their silver eyes, at Isef and the shimmering advocate. The scope of what she faced overwhelmed her. This wasn't a simple case of medical malpractice or unethical experimentation. It was an existential crisis that spanned dimensions. "I need time," she said finally, "time to think." "Time is the one resource we cannot provide," the advocate responded. "Our dimension accelerates toward collapse. Decision required now." "What decision?" Patricia asked warily. "Alliance or opposition. Help expand the program with your knowledge of human biology and ethics, or resist and watch both worlds perish." "That's not a choice," Patricia objected. "That's an ultimatum." "It's reality," Isef said softly. "The physics are undeniable. Our worlds are linked now, their fate is yours. Patricia closed her eyes, trying to think. If what they said was true, exposing the program might doom humanity rather than save it. But continuing without oversight, without consent, without transparency, that violated everything she believed in as a healthcare provider, there must be another way, she insisted. Voluntary participation, full disclosure of risks, compensation for the families of those who don't survive. Isef exchanged a look with the advocate, some unspoken communication passing between them. The program requires scale and speed that public disclosure would impede, Isef said finally. Human governments would intervene. Religious groups would object. The chaos would prevent necessary progress. So instead you operate in secret, letting people die without their families knowing the truth? Patricia shook her head. That's not salvation. That's predation. The advocate's form pulsed, contracting to a concentrated point of light before expanding again. An alternative exists. Limited disclosure, controlled participation, ethical oversight, imperfect but functional. Patricia sensed an opening. Explain. You become intermediary, bridge between species as others become bridges between worlds. Establish protocols, select candidates, ensure consent. You want me to run your program? Patricia asked incredulously. To humanize it, Isef clarified. To ensure it respects your species' values while meeting our existential need. Patricia considered the offer. Working within the program, she could implement safeguards, ensure informed consent, perhaps even reduce casualties through better screening. It wasn't perfect, but it might be the best option available. I need guarantees, she said firmly. Complete transparency about the process and risks. Voluntary participation only. No more targeting desperate people. And families of those who don't survive must be told the truth and compensated substantially. Inefficient but acceptable, the advocate conceded. Adaptation requires compromise. There's more, Patricia continued, sensing her momentary leverage. I need access to all research data. I want to understand the transformation process completely, including why some survive and others don't. And I want my colleague, Dr. Rashida Okami, brought in as scientific director. Isef frowned. The biochemist you consulted? She's already aware of the element? She discovered it's not from our periodic table, Patricia confirmed. She's brilliant and ethical. You need her expertise. After a long pause, Isef nodded. Acceptable, provided she understands the stakes and maintains operational security. And finally, Patricia said, no more deaths covered up as complications. Complete honesty about what happened to previous donors, including Marcus Williams and Marley Novak. The advocate's form rippled, communicating something to Isef that Patricia couldn't perceive. The silver-eyed man seemed to debate internally before responding. A Marley Novak's transformation failed, he admitted. Her consciousness fragmented between dimensions. The physical form you saw die was only part of her. Fragments exist in our world, but not as a coherent entity. And Marcus Williams? Successfully transitioned, he serves now as a primary anchor, one of the first stable bridges. Patricia thought of Jerome, waiting for news of his nephew. He has family who deserve to know he's alive. A contact is possible, though limited. Isef said, those who transition experience reality differently. Their connections to former lives often fade. Let his uncle see him, Patricia insisted, as proof of good faith. Agreed, the advocate interjected. Alliance formed, terms accepted. The entity's form began to destabilize, the silver light dimming as it prepared to depart. Implementation begins immediately. Survival probability increased 27.3%, a favorable outcome. With that, the advocate vanished, leaving behind a lingering silver shimmer in the air. Patricia turned to Isef, suddenly exhausted but resolute. "I'll need everything: records, research, access to the transformed donors, and we announce the program publicly, with full disclosure of the interdimensional aspect." "That will cause panic," Isef objected. "Initially, yes, but humans adapt." Patricia looked around at the facility, still barely comprehending its impossible architecture. "If you want our help, you have to trust us with the truth." Over the following weeks, Patricia worked tirelessly to restructure the Strand program. With Rashida's scientific expertise and Jerome's security knowledge, they established new protocols focused on transparency and ethics. The public announcement came 3 months later, a carefully orchestrated press conference revealing the existence of the interdimensional bridge program and the threat of universal collapse. As expected, the initial reaction was chaos, religious outrage, scientific skepticism, government intervention attempts. But when the successfully transformed donors appeared publicly, demonstrating their enhanced abilities and dual consciousness, public opinion began to shift. Volunteer applications flooded in, particularly from the terminally ill seeking a different form of survival. The transformation success rate improved under Rashida's supervision from 60% to 73% over the first year. Those who didn't survive were honored publicly, their families compensated with funds drawn from a new international consortium established to support the program. Patricia became the human face of the initiative, bridging the gap between species as the advocate had suggested. Her insistence on ethical standards sometimes slowed progress, frustrating Isef and his kind. But the resulting stability and public support ultimately proved more valuable than speed. 6 years after Marley Novak's failed transformation, the program had established 50 facilities worldwide. Over 10,000 humans had successfully transitioned, creating a stable network of biological bridges between dimensions. Interdimensional physics stabilized, buying time for both universes to develop more permanent solutions. On the anniversary of her discovery, Patricia stood in the original chamber at St. Augustine's, watching new volunteers enter the transformation tanks. The process had been refined, the silver fluid now customized to each participant's unique biology. Minimizing rejection risks. Isef appeared beside her, his silver eyes regarding her with something like respect. "You were right," he admitted. "Cooperation yields better results than coercion." Patricia nodded, thinking of how far they'd come. Symbiosis requires mutual benefit and consent. That's the difference between evolution and exploitation. Around them, the silver light pulsed gently, flowing through the network of tubes that now extended throughout the world. A new circulatory system connecting 2 universes through the most fundamental substance of life. Blood, the most unstable element in the universe, had found stability in humanity's veins, transforming both species in the process. Not through conquest or subjugation, but through understanding, adaptation, and choice, the true hallmarks of evolution. As new volunteers prepared for transformation, Patricia remembered her own words from that first confrontation. "This isn't salvation, this is predation." She had been right then, but together they had found a middle pathone that honored the dignity of individual choice while addressing the existential needs of both worlds. The impossible element continued to flow between dimensions, but now it carried something else with it. Hope, freely given and ethically received. A true symbiosis, born from the most unlikely of discoveries in a Detroit blood bank.